Okay, short version. Last time, imagined hypothetical way in which the hypothetical reboot of the now death-spiraling DC Extended Universe movie franchise via the hypothetical Flashpoint film might hypothetically play out if I was hypothetically in charge. Hypothetically. This episode, gonna go through the movies we know they plan to make, the movies we think they should make, and a few I think they should make, how they should not fuck those up either, excluding Justice League movies because we talked about that the last time. Once again, the new mandate for the entire enterprise in this hypothetical scenario where I'm in charge of it is simple, character-focused, minimal continuity and connection business in the main plot focus of the individual films. That shit goes in bonus scenes or background noise like it does in most of the Marvel movies until everyone has their shit together. Savvy? Okay, let's bang these out. Superman is not as hard to tell stories about as people tend to think. What happens is people get overwhelmed by the legacy and iconic nature of the brand and end up only being able to depict the character as a meta-symbolic meditation on his own place in pop culture and their view of it. And that worked for the Richard Donner movies. It didn't work for Superman Returns, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, or Justice League. You want to sell Superman as a character? Depict him as a fucking character. Don't obsess over the stripped-down foundation on which all of the heroes are built symbolic version of him. Dig into the deep, unique, very weird bullpen of this franchise's own singular mythology. Smallville, Ma and Pa Kent, Metropolis, Daily Planet, Lois, Jimmy, Perry White, Lana Lang, Supergirl maybe, Fortress of Solitude, Bottle City of Kandor, Krypto, Streaky, Comet, Beppo, the different colors of kryptonite and their various effects, villains like Luthor and Brainiac, sure, but also Bizarro, Toyman, Prankster, Parasite, Kryptonite Man, Mr. Mixaplit, Mr. Mixpidlick, Mixaspidlick, Mr. Mixia-Spidlick, perhaps. There's a lot of Superman stuff to make Superman movies out of. Stuff that makes him interesting and different from all the other heroes, and not just a postmodern meditation on himself. Use it. Or if you still don't want to, so how come nobody has ever made this movie? If you're still not fully sure of how you want to approach Superman on a level other than opaque symbol of his own ubiquitous presence, okay, so make him a supporting character in a movie about Lois Lane. Ambitious, crusading, investigative journalist, making this a female detective and a woman in the workplace movie, trying to unravel a shady conspiracy thing through reporting, while also reporting on this mysterious flying superhero guy. Eventually the two stories come together, and Clark Kent is just some dorky guy she knows at work, and maybe in the last scene you do the thing where he says something and it's all, does she know? I think she knows. They'll have to deal with that in the next one. And hey, look at that! Now you've got a whole other not terribly expensive female-led franchise, and you've introduced a Superman to use once you figure out how. Oh, and I know Superman origin movie. Everyone knows, no one cares, don't make us sit through that again. I kinda already did a How to Fix Batman video, so not gonna spend too much time on this one. Watch that episode, I stand by it. Focus more than the previous movies on the detective aspect, because that, more than anything, is what's gonna meaningfully separate him from all these other characters. He doesn't need to save the world. There's gonna be like 24 actual metahumans handling that kind of shit now. Batman fights crimes and investigates the shady, dirty stuff so he can still be your dark franchise without needing Batman himself to be a brooding sad sack the whole goddamn time. Stop with Robin and a couple lower tier bad guys already existing, and Catwoman for a romantic foil maybe. Establish Barbara Gordon and Catherine Kane as civilians who exist so you can do those movies later if you want. And if it's me, yeah, I switch to the blue and gray with yellow accents color scheme as a definitive statement of, hey, this is different now. As I said last episode, it's Batman, but also kinda Spider-Man and also Iron Man in the future with more sci-fi stuff and presumably played by some handsome young rising star. Bonus points if you drive a truckload of money up to Michael Keaton's house to get him to play old Bruce Wayne. There's a great supporting cast already established. It's the possible future, so you don't have to pay attention to the other movies. Honestly, they should make this even if they don't set it up elsewhere or connect it to anything. It's a near guaranteed moneymaker with big franchise potential all on its own. But if you did want to use it as a setup opportunity for somebody else, well, okay, so Booster Gold is this very fun character who's just an almost-was football star turned ordinary loser from the future who stumbles on a time machine and reasons that if he goes back in time, with basic future tech and cursory knowledge of history yet to happen, he could be a superhero in the 20th century. But when he gets there, he's kind of just a well-meaning dipshit who doesn't really know all that much about what's gonna happen, so he really only makes it as a B-lister at best. He didn't really take off as a beloved fixture until he became a fan-favorite double act with the Blue Beetle. That's the Steve Ditko character inherited from Charlton comics, who was also the inspiration for Night Owl from Watchmen. Basically, Batman, but without the tragedy and more in it just for the fun and profit during the Justice League International days. So off-brand Superman type and off-brand Batman type are buddies who are always trying to leverage the whole superhero thing for personal gain. That's a good comedy premise. Warner's has already said they'd like to do this movie. With the right actors and a tease in Batman Beyond or something else, this feels like it should be a hit. Yeah, so this franchise is doing pretty fine already, so I got nothing to add. Except maybe double down on bringing in cool female villains, even if you gotta borrow them from the other heroes. Cheetah, Giganta, Circe, sure, but maybe also Poison Ivy, Maxima, Killer Frost, Knockout, Star Sapphire, Livewire, you get the picture. Oh, and pull the trigger on a girlfriend already. Just do it. It's 2017, it's canon, it'd be a huge fucking deal, and it's frankly about time. Don't let Marvel eventually beat you to this too, especially when they were one deleted scene in Thor 3 from beating you to this period. Unless we're counting Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., of course, in which case they already beat you to this, and yeah, actually, so did Power Rangers, kind of, but you could still be the first to do it out loud in a good superhero movie, and that ain't nothing. So you know how we're letting Batman be a detective on his own well-explored character rather than a world-saver largely defined by the colorful villains he faces? That's because we're going to do that shit here. The Flash is pretty easy to understand as a character, with a pretty easy-to-understand power, and probably the second or third best lineup of villains in the entire genre after Batman and Spider-Man. You don't go back in time or do reality crossing after Flashpoint. Don't make it all about other speed-powered characters. This is your lighter, peppier, Ant-Man-style action comedy franchise, at least to start with wacky bad guys and big fun action spectacle. Shouldn't be that hard. Hal Jordan or Jon Stewart. Either guy works. Apart from one obvious substantive difference, they're both very good characters, so flip a coin. As for the movie, get it off Earth as soon as possible. Get out into space and cosmic stuff and keep it there as much as you can, at least to start with. Yes, we've got a lot of space movies, but the Green Lantern Corps aren't just space guys, they're space police, and that's something we don't really see a lot of. The cosmic side of the DC universe has endless people and places to encounter as the hero goes about his police work, so maybe this is Space Dirty Harry, it's Space Training Day, and like Sinestro is Denzel. Maybe it's Space Serpico and there's a conspiracy. Maybe it's Space 48 Hours and the parolee and or vigilante partner is like Lobo or the Martian Manhunter. Hey, there's two dudes you could be trying out for their own movies. Otherwise, once you sell the audience on Green Lantern himself, this property is better suited to a robust solo franchise than almost any other second-tier DC hero. The concept is a winner, the setting as established is wide open with possibility, and the broader mythos is deep and extremely robust. So maybe movie number 1 is Sinestro Goes Yellow Lantern and bad. Movie number 2 is, oh, there's also the red, orange, blue, indigo, and star sapphire lanterns. Isn't that neat? And number 3 is maybe Blackest Night, maybe guest starring the rest of the Justice League. Hell, you still want to make use of the New Gods characters? This would be a place to do that. On the other hand, so Batman v Superman and Justice League were very clearly meant to be building up to a big, huge thing involving Darkseid and the whole New Gods pantheon from Jack Kirby's Fourth World books, and then just kinda decided not to. Honestly, that might be for the best. New Gods should really be its own franchise. Crossovers may be okay, but otherwise, it's this huge property with dozens of characters, tons of stories, the whole weird space meets superheroes aesthetic of Guardians of the Galaxy and the most recent Thor, but with giant scale space opera. Like, this could literally be the Star Wars of superhero movies. Why only use it to pillage bad guys from? Granted, the mythology is a bit obtuse, but if you're looking for a down-to-earth-ish relatable way in, I mean, Mr. Miracle and Big Barda are right there. The whole big tough hard-ass villain falls for the clever underdog good guy love story is always a winner here, and the genders are flipped around, so that's interesting. Written well with the right actors, this pairing would win the audience over and they'd follow them into the deeper, weirder stuff with Orion and Darkseid and Highfather and all the rest. Then, if you want to do broader DCEU connections otherwise in either direction, the groundwork is there. Maybe the Lanterns get involved, maybe Martian Manhunter, hell, maybe this is where you test run stuff like the Hawks and Thanagar and Starfire. And hey, isn't Space Ghost technically a DC property now? Huh? Yeah, I'd watch that movie. Oh, and it goes without saying, Granny Goodness and the Female Furies would be perfect nemesis for a Wonder Woman sequel. Not going to spend a lot of time here because nobody knows what the hell the about-to-exist actual Aquaman movie is going to be, but considering Jason Momoa's performance in Justice League, I kind of feel like the already highly dubious prospect that our culture was demanding an Aquaman movie in the first place is about to be dealt a serious, serious blow. But if you have to keep this one going, maybe just lean into the general conception of what the character already is, instead of trying to pump him full of testosterone in the hopes everyone forgets that it's still Aquaman. You know, like, it's already pretty novel as the DC Extended Universe goes that the brawny, brawling Swords and Sandals franchise is also the female franchise, so maybe on the flip side, the dude who's already like 2/3 a mermaid, lives in a magical castle under the sea, and hangs out with dolphins and rides a giant seahorse is not the ultra macho guy. Or maybe he doesn't need to be the ultra macho guy, maybe instead he's your smooth, sophisticated, sensitive guy hero. I don't know. Honestly, the only reason to do this is if you want to prevent the competition from making Submariner because, yeah, sexy bad boy anti-hero in crazy shape whose costume is a Speedo, that kind of feels like the apotheosis of the whole Marvel's secret weapon is understanding the female gaze thing, so another couple $100 million. I honestly have no idea what to do with Cyborg as a solo franchise that's not just a watered-down RoboCop, but he's not a cop. I don't want to discount the prospect outright because, hey, more black superheroes absolutely needed. I'm just not sure it's Cyborg. Some characters just aren't solo leads, sorry. That being said, some of those very same characters who aren't solo leads work very well in a team dynamic, so I have two thoughts. Apparently Warner Brothers is still committed to doing Teen Titans as a live-action show, but if they don't or it bombs and we're assuming that Fisher is out, maybe recast Younger and do Titans as a movie, and in this incarnation Cyborg is the leader. DC has been kinda shitty at capitalizing on it, but the early 2000s Titan cartoon was a major formative thing for a generation of initial viewers, so this could well be the kind of we didn't know how big this was gonna be property like X-Men was initially. Or, assuming Fisher does stick around and or Teen Titans would somehow be redundant as a movie. Okay, so The Outsiders was this pretty cool cult classic 80s series, the premise of which was that Batman gets sick of the Justice League being all establishment about who gets to be a member and what they get involved in, and he quits and starts his own team for superheroes who are weird, different, marginalized backgrounds or otherwise non-mainstream, which is a great setup, except, you know, Batman? Really? The super white, old money, billionaire Law and Order guy is gonna start the fight the power everybody else team? That's a no. But a character like Cyborg with his background, origin, power set, general persona, that might be something. Much like Aquaman, I hope the movie they're making works, and it's hard to say what I'd do different when I don't know what the real movie is even going to be yet. My hope is that they lean very heavily into the fact that even though Captain whatever they decide to call him looks like an adult hero, he's actually a little kid. I mean, if you're not using this franchise as a wish fulfillment fantasy or an exploration of wish fulfillment fantasies, I don't know why you're making it in the first place when you've already got Superman. Boy, Joss Whedon doing this sure doesn't sound like as much of a slam dunk as it did a year or so ago on multiple different fronts, huh? So the pros on this are pretty obvious, right? It's Nancy Drew, but with Batman stuff, kind of obvious, always has been. But the question then of course becomes, what do you do about the fact that the only iconic Barbara Gordon Batgirl story is pretty much the one where she gets crippled and also, by implication, possibly sexually assaulted? I mean, this is a real problem, right? The whole entire comeback as Oracle is a great story of character evolution that the fans are going to demand, but it wasn't something that came about organically or through planning. It was a very successful corrective to a pretty sleazy beat and a story that even Alan Moore doesn't seem to think holds up for the most part anymore. And now that they've made it the She's Got Better, which kind of blunts the whole point of the overcoming thing, I just don't know. Plus, Killing Joke is 100% pretty much the kind of outdated edgelord bullshit that the failure of Batman v Superman suggests that the whole genre could really stand to grow out of, no matter how much aging fanboys still bust a nut over it. So if it's me in charge, I take the opportunity and I make a statement. You do Killing Joke, you do it in the first movie, but with a new twist. You do the traditional Barbara decides to be Batgirl independent of Batman or her father origin setup. You have Joker be the main antagonist or behind the main antagonist in whatever Batman Commissioner Gordon centered crime story thing her first missions are playing out adjacent to. Seems like it gets wrapped up at the end of Act 2, but she kind of screws up a bit on her end because inexperience and Batman mostly gets the win and she feels defeated and the villains realize who she really is. So start of Act 3, door opens, Joker, Hawaiian shirt, gun, gut shot, Jim Gordon kidnapped off to the fairground, whole rest of Killing Joke. But in this version, instead of Joker trying to drive Gordon nuts with photos of Barbara getting tormented, it's 2017, so he's gonna show him a live stream of his henchmen doing it. But when he turns on the feed, oh my god, she's gone! She was actually mostly fine because she was prepared with like bulletproof bat stuff. It's a comic book movie. Figure it the fuck out. And she beat up the henchmen, and hey, surprise, now she's right here as Batgirl, and she saves her dad, big fight, defeats the Joker, Batman shows up and she's already got it handled, gets away with the secret identity intact, redemption, personal validation, giant middle finger to the original version of this, defining the character for so long. Now let's do some sequels. If Margot Robbie hasn't found a way out of her contract yet and still wants to make Gotham City Sirens, fine, make it. An ensemble movie for a bunch of different female Batman and or otherwise gritty DC characters isn't the worst idea. If not, I mean, maybe it's still a decent way to try out new versions of Catwoman, Poison Ivy, Harley, Batwoman, Renee Montoya version of The Question, maybe, Black Canary, Zatanna, Vixen, but I mean, there's got to be other, better vehicles for most of them, right? The TV show has to be winding down sooner or later, right? And it's fine. It's a decent series. I like Arrow. It launched what is still pretty much the good live-action DC thing for the moment, but I think there's room, especially in a movie version, for something more like the post-1970s Green Arrow, i.e. the only reason anyone still cares that this character existed in the first place, where he's less Batman with arrows and leans more into the whole Robin Hood, socially conscious vigilante hippie thing. That feels kind of necessary right now, and honestly, I've always thought that Robin Hood, but for today, and he dresses like Robin Hood, is a pretty easy sell as far as these movies go. Swamp Thing rocks. Great name, great design, great original mythology, great bonkers reworked Alan Moore mythology. I mean, it's the Lorax, but he speaks for the trees by beating the shit out of people, you know? He's like woke, vegan, goth Hulk. And if you need a little help with the sell in the first movie, maybe use a more general audience familiar, appropriately themed antagonist. Okay, solid, but we can do better. There it is. The Metal Men is this fun property that not a lot of people have heard of about a scientist named Will Magnus who makes these robots who are each comprised of one type of metal and have personalities reflecting the properties of their respective mineral because magic science. So like gold is the leader, lead is the tough guy, tin is insecure, mercury is wacky, platinum is the girl one, basically. It's a cute idea. You could motion capture celebrities to play the main characters, so it would mostly be an animated movie. I always thought this had potential, especially if you cast outside the box for Will Magnus. The Spectre is pretty much one of the ironic punishment monsters from the Hellraiser movies, but he's the good guy. So we're basically rooting for him to show up and, like, drown polluters in toxic waste, or cause liars' tongues to turn into actual silver and choke them to death, or compel sex abusers' dicks to morph into cobras that bite them to death, stuff like that. So maybe he's more like superhero Freddy Krueger. Like, he's an all-powerful magical slasher genie whose victims are the bad guys. There's no excuse that this isn't already a super gruesome R-rated horror franchise that's had 15 sequels. This should have been taken care of way the hell long ago. Animal Man is the man with the animal powers. He has a psychic connection with the animal kingdom that lets him temporarily borrow natural abilities of nearby animals to use as superpowers. So like he can borrow the sense of smell of a dog to track guys better, or he can take the strength of a gorilla and punch people, or like if he makes connection with a bird, he doesn't sprout wings, he just kind of flies for a little while. If you can't wrench a 90-minute superhero comedy out of that premise, like, oh, I gotta catch that bank robber, what's around? And the closest thing he sees is like a beaver, so he has to stop him by chewing through a telephone pole or something, you aren't trying. It's an even more kid-friendly answer to Ant-Man just waiting to be made. Okay, if this nonsense were to actually work out and you wound up in a spot like Marvel was eventually in around Civil War, where the culture is now down with your whole scene and you can flex your goodwill and do something a little more weird now that you got their trust, I think you actually could get a whole movie, maybe even a whole other franchise, out of the old Earth 3 concept, which was an alternate timeline where the good guys and bad guys were all opposite lands. So instead of the Justice League, it's the Crime Syndicate, with bad guy versions of Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Flash, Green Lantern, and whoever else, and the Earth 3 versions of Lex Luthor and the Joker are the good guys. I mean, come on, good guy Joker, you don't even have to see it and you know that's a #1 selling Halloween costume at the very least. Now you could do it as a one-off thing where some character from our world winds up there and you get the Justice League, Luthor, and Joker actors from the regular movies to play their opposite selves. That would be a riot. Or you get new actors and do it as its own sub-series. Either way, it's a fun concept, the audience would probably be down for it, and if it connects really well, maybe then you do the team versus team crossover movie and just blow the whole thing out. And that's what I got. Thought experiment over. Voice not in great shape. Now let's see if the actual people in charge can do any of it better. I mean, realistically, they probably should be able to do it better. They're like professionals with all kinds of money to spend and time to work on these ideas. I got comparatively little money and, to be honest, kind of banged this whole thing out over a weekend. So, yeah, see you guys next time.
Hey gang, here's a question that keeps coming up. If your handle is MovieBob, where are your movie reviews? Well, my old reviews are in a lot of places. You'll find many of them on my YouTube channel, but you'll find the brand new ones on Geek.com, an awesome site that's also your one-stop news source for science, TV, gaming, technology, nerd culture, the works. You can find all my reviews directly by going to geek.com/author/bchipman, because that's my real name, and you can get regular updates on all my reviews and all of Geek.com's other great content by signing up for their kick-ass newsletter at subscribe.geek.com. And don't forget to also subscribe to the Geek.com YouTube channel, where you'll find the videos that accompany my reviews and tons of other great content too. Remember, that's Geek.com, the Geek.com newsletter, and Geek.com on YouTube. Make sure you don't miss out on all the latest MovieBob reviews. You can also check out my own new website, MovieBob Central, where you'll find my blog, links to all my work, and shop for my books, ebooks, and future MovieBob products. And please remember to like these videos, share them with all of your friends, and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching another MovieBob production.